Alright, so today we're going to talk about a functional iron deficiency. Do you have an iron deficiency, but you don't actually know about it? I'll see you inside. So, iron deficiency is actually the most prevalent nutritional deficiency, and nearly 1.2 billion people in the world suffer from iron deficiency. And an iron deficiency is simply referring to low iron stores that do not meet the body's iron requirements. So, ferritin is an indicator of iron stores and is the most sensitive and specific biomarker for assessing iron deficiency. Many people will just get the iron and try and draw conclusions based on that, but it really is the storage form of iron, which is ferritin, that seems to be the most important. And now, ferritin is actually referred to as an acute phase reactant and will actually increase during inflammation. Therefore, very high ferritin levels could actually be seen as an indicator that there's some sort of chronic inflammation going on that we may not actually notice. And now, iron actually has a storage pool and a functional pool. The storage pool is called the reticuloendothelial system, and it consists of the liver, spleen, and lymph nodes. Whereas the functional pool consists of red blood cells, cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle, and the bone marrow. And now iron is actually absorbed in what's called the duodenum, which is simply just that initial portion of your small intestine. And the small intestine is where most nutrient absorption occurs. And now iron is actually carried by these transferrin molecules to the storage and functional pools. But interestingly, iron deficiency can be either absolute or functional. An absolute iron deficiency is simply when the storage pool of iron is low. And there are a few different reasons this could occur. We may have a poor absorption of iron. We may have an excessive loss of iron via exercise or other activities. We may have increased needs for iron that we're not meeting through our diet, or we may just have very low intakes of iron, or an accumulation of all of these leading to an iron deficiency. But an absolute iron deficiency is when we simply just do not have enough iron inside of our body. And in absolute iron deficiency, both the storage and the functional pool are low. And now functional iron deficiency is different. In functional iron deficiency, we actually have enough iron in our body, but we don't have it in the correct places. The issue is chronic inflammation, which causes cytokine and hepcidin release. And hepcidin will actually cause an iron deficiency by blocking the iron exporter known as ferroportin. And what ferroportin does, it is actually increases the availability of iron by taking it out of the storage pool in the duodenum, spleen, and liver, and increasing the iron in the functional pool, meaning the iron that's actually being used and is available for the tissues. But hepcidin will actually block this transporter, and it will cause iron retention within the storage pools. Therefore, we will actually have enough iron and normal levels of iron in the storage pools, but the functional pools are iron deficient and cannot utilize the stored iron for vital processes that occur inside the body. And now it appears that an iron deficiency can be grouped into one of the following four categories: inadequate intake, increased body needs, reduced absorption, chronic blood loss, or chronic inflammation. But chronic inflammation is the only scenario in which we actually have enough iron, we simply just cannot access it. And now this chronic inflammation could be something such as celiac disease, or maybe inflammatory bowel disease, where you have a lot of digestive inflammation. And now you may also hear this functional iron deficiency known as non-anemic iron deficiency. So approximately 70% of the iron in adults is actually found within hemoglobin in red blood cells. But this is part of the functional pool, and when we have an abundance in the storage pool but not enough in the functional pool, this ratio will be off. And now some of the symptoms of iron deficiency without anemia or functional iron deficiency seem to be fibromyalgia, restless leg syndrome. It appears that There may be neurocognitive dysfunction, such as irritability, and then really the normal symptoms of any iron deficiency, which include weakness, fatigue, reduced exercise performance, difficulty concentrating, and even poor productivity. And now, it seems that chronic kidney disease and other chronic inflammatory diseases like rheumatoid arthritis are likely the most common causes of functional iron deficiency. However, we can almost quite simply diagnose a functional iron deficiency by taking blood work and interpreting it. As I mentioned, ferritin is actually where iron is stored. And when we have this chronic inflammation, our ferritin will increase and more of the iron will be shuttled into the ferritin molecules. And now another marker that we can get measured on blood work is transferrin, which will actually take the iron around the body to actually be used. Therefore, if we have a low transferrin, but we have a very high ferritin, it means that we have enough iron in the body, but the body is keeping it in storage. Interestingly, I actually forgot to mention why this occurs in the first place. So this is actually an adaptive mechanism that humans have developed to fight off against bacterial infections, because bacteria can actually use iron to grow and proliferate. And inflammation occurs when we have a bacterial infection, so the body's response to inflammation is to increase the levels of ferritin and shuttle the iron into ferritin so that it's not available for the bacteria. So if we go back to our blood work, if we see that we have high levels of ferritin but low levels of transferrin, then it is likely that there is somewhere in our body that there is chronic inflammation and the body is trying to hide the iron into ferritin so that it does not increase the amount of inflammation and damage that's occurring due to a bacterial infection or other inflammatory processes. Iron can actually also cause what's referred to as free radicals, which are simply just molecules that will also cause inflammation. Therefore, if we reduce the amount of iron, we'll likely reduce the amount of free radicals and reduce the inflammation further. Therefore, I simply just want you to actually be attentive for this if you ever get blood work done and look to see if you may have skewed iron levels. Because in this situation, taking more iron would not be of benefit whatsoever. Taking more iron to try and raise our blood iron will be a fool's errand because our body will take that iron and store it right into ferritin. So if we take iron, we will simply just be increasing our storage form of iron and we won't be doing anything for the functional pool of iron that's required to supply to the body tissues. And it seems that the only way to combat this would simply be to reduce the inflammation and allow the body to release the iron that it has in storage. With that being said, if you do look at your blood work and you see that you have low ferritin as well, then this likely isn't a case of functional iron deficiency. Rather, it is an absolute iron deficiency because there is no iron inside of your body at all. Therefore, it wouldn't matter what your body is doing with it because there are such minimal amounts that even if your body is trying to store it, there's not enough to store. And now I know this podcast was a little bit random, but I just thought it was a very interesting and cool idea that not many people really understand, and I just wanted to get it out there and speak about it, so if this is a problem that you actually come across, you will know what to do in the future. And I really hope this podcast was interesting and helpful, and I hope you come back to listen to the next podcast. The final thing I'll leave you on is that all of my information is in the description of this podcast. You can find my YouTube and all of my writings there, and you can follow me on Instagram at Calvin_Scheller. Thank you for listening. I will see you next episode.